Mazel Tov by J S Margot, set in the Modern Orthodox Jewish community in Antwerp and published by Pushkin Press. This is a memoir of the author's time working for the Schneider family in Antwerp, a modern Orthodox Jewish family, and looking after their 4 children. Her main charge was Elzira, who was one of the younger girls, and she also suffered from dyspraxia and therefore needed quite a boost of self-confidence. The story is very much about her observations as a goy, so a non-Jewish person, walking into and living amongst people who had such a different cultural context from her own. The author is clearly fascinated by what she encounters, and she observes the difference in culture, the traditions, and absorbs them very much as she gets to know the family members, and they get to know her too. Interestingly, she has a boyfriend who is from Persia, so she very much looks at two very different cultures that have come into her life. So the scene has very much been set in part 1, and her learning has been amazing. She then decides in part 2, when the kids have left home, so it's a few years later, she is going to go and visit some of them who are living in Israel. And again, she is there for a sensory overload and to get a little bit more learning. In many ways, this is a fascinating read, and certainly if you're not familiar with the customs of the Orthodox religion, then this will be an eye-opener for you. But I think if you have read something like The Marriage of CHANI KAUFMAN, or you have seen Unorthodox on Netflix, or you've seen Disobedience in the cinema, then I think there was nothing new here. But I think my remaining feeling about it was that it was actually quite sad. It was almost like she needed something, she needed to be with him, she needed something from him. And because there was such a difference in culture, she probably never really got what she was looking for. And I think that left me feeling quite sad for her. Several years later, Elzira is living in New York with her new husband, and she has a couple of children, and she is struggling with an issue. So the husband rings up the author and asks her to go and visit in New York to give some support. But you can tell that the channels of communication have never really been established, and therefore the support the author can give Elzira is actually quite limited, and that was quite sad. Then towards the end of the book, the author is having a conversation with the Schneiders, Mr. and Mrs. Schneider, about writing her memoir, and they voice their concern over her doing that. So the book ends on a kind of uncomfortable note, because you're not quite sure whether her writing it is condoned by the family. However, if you are interested to have a peek into a very different culture, then Mazel Tov by J S Margot, published by Pushkin Press, is one to pick up.